The twin suns were sinking behind the crystal spires of the alien capital when the announcement spread across the empire. The council had chosen a punishment that none had ever imagined for Princess Lysera, daughter of the High Queen of Virelia. Her crime was not of violence or betrayal but of defiance. She had questioned the Queen's decision to destroy a small human colony that stood in the path of the royal expansion fleet. In her compassion, Lysera had given the humans a secret warning, saving hundreds of lives. For that act of mercy, she was condemned to marry one of those same humans, a soldier from that very colony, and live as his wife for a full year. If she refused, she would be stripped of her title and sent into exile. When she heard the judgment, Lysera's world shattered. She had been raised to believe humans were fragile, impulsive creatures, barely capable of honor or loyalty. To be bound to one in a public ceremony was humiliation beyond measure. Yet beneath her fear was something else, a spark of curiosity that frightened her even more than the punishment itself. The human chosen for this sentence was Captain Aaron Hale, a soldier who had fought during the defense of the colony of New Eden. His name had been pulled from a long list of survivors, but rumor whispered that he was selected for another reason. He had saved alien lives during that same battle. The Queen wanted the Empire to witness her daughter's shame. To see the proud princess standing beside a creature she had once sworn was beneath her. But Aaron had his own scars both on his body and in his heart. He had lost friends and his home to the Queen's fleet. When the order reached him, he was stunned. A royal marriage? To the daughter of his enemy? It felt like a cruel joke of fate. The day of the ceremony arrived beneath a violet sky. Lysera stood before the grand altar, wearing a dress woven from living silk that shimmered like starlight. Her silver eyes were steady, but inside she trembled. Across from her stood Aaron, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in a formal uniform of dark navy cloth with a single medal glinting on his chest. His brown hair was trimmed short, his jaw shadowed, his expression unreadable. When he met her eyes, she saw neither anger nor pride, only quiet strength and perhaps a trace of sorrow. The officiator spoke in both their languages. The words of union sounded hollow to Lysera, but the moment Aaron took her hand, something shifted. His palm was warm, his touch firm but gentle. It was not the grip of an enemy. It was human, real. A strange rush of feeling moved through her, part surprise, part disbelief. For the first time in her life, she felt the heartbeat of another being, not through power or fear, but through touch. The ceremony ended. The crowd watched in silence as they signed the union seal. Lysera felt the weight of thousands of eyes upon her, waiting for her to stumble, to show weakness. She lifted her chin and walked beside the human, her steps measured, her pride intact, but her thoughts were in chaos. She told herself that it meant nothing, that she was enduring this to prove her strength. Yet the warmth of his hand still lingered in her memory. Their transport took them away from the palace, through fields of glowing crystal and across bridges of light. Lysera sat stiffly, avoiding his gaze. Aaron spoke first, his voice calm and low. "I didn't ask for this," he said, "but I'll do what I can to make it bearable for both of us." She turned toward him sharply, her silver hair catching the light. "Do not speak as if I am a burden, human," she said. "This is your reward, not mine." He gave a small, dry laugh. "Reward? That's one way to see it." He looked out the window at the stars rising over the horizon. "I lost my home because of your people. I'd call this more of a strange peace treaty." The words stung, though she told herself they shouldn't. She folded her hands and looked away. Neither spoke for the rest of the journey. Their new home was a quiet estate on the outer edge of the imperial gardens. The Queen had chosen it precisely because it was far from the city's attention, but still within the reach of her spies. The structure blended human practicality and alien beauty, smooth silver walls, soft blue light, and a garden filled with trees that hummed faintly in the wind. Lysera stepped out first, breathing the cool air. It smelled different from the palace, simpler, freer. She didn't want to admit it, but the peace unsettled her. Inside, Aaron explored in silence. He had never seen such elegance. Every wall seemed alive, pulsing faintly with energy. He paused near a window and stared out at the alien stars. Somewhere out there, his old comrades were rebuilding, far from this place. He wondered if they would ever believe what fate had done to him. Lysera noticed him standing by the window. For a long moment she watched him. There was no arrogance in his posture, no hatred. Just thoughtfulness. She realized that despite her training, she could not read him the way she read her own kind. Humans were unpredictable, alive in ways her people were not. Later that evening, a quiet dinner was prepared by silent service drones. They ate in near silence until Aaron finally asked, "Do you regret saving us?" She looked up sharply. "What makes you ask that?" "Because it cost you everything," he said. "Your family, your title." She hesitated. "I do not regret it, but I regret that mercy must be punished." He nodded slowly. "Then we have that in common." That night, as the moons rose over the garden, Lysera stood on the balcony, her long robe whispering in the wind. The air was cool, filled with the sound of distant songbirds. She felt strangely lost. Everything she had known, her purpose, her people's pride, felt distant now. She thought of her mother's cold eyes, of the council's laughter, and then she thought of Aaron's hand, the warmth that had reached her through her fear. Behind her, the door opened softly. Aaron stepped out, careful not to startle her. "I didn't mean to intrude," he said. "I just wanted to make sure you're all right." She turned, her voice quiet. "Why do you care?" He hesitated. "Because you look like someone carrying too much alone." "I know what that feels like." She looked away quickly, hiding the tremor in her voice. "Humans are strange," she whispered. "You fight wars, yet you speak of care." "Maybe that's why we fight," he said gently. "To protect what we care about." Something inside her softened. She wanted to reply, but couldn't find the words. He stood beside her, silent, looking up at the moons. The space between them was filled with the sound of wind and the faint hum of alien trees. For the first time since her punishment began, she did not feel entirely alone. As the night deepened, she found herself studying his face, the lines of weariness, the quiet strength in his eyes. He was not what she had imagined. Not a beast, not a brute, but a man shaped by loss and duty. She realized that she had been told stories that painted humans as savages. Yet standing beside this one, she could see compassion written in the smallest gestures. When she finally turned to go back inside, Aaron reached out without thinking. His hand brushed her arm lightly, a simple touch, almost accidental. But it froze her in place. His hand was warm, steady, real. For an instant her heart seemed to stop, then race. The cold armor of pride she wore began to crack. She met his eyes, saw the same surprise mirrored there, and something wordless passed between them. Lysera stepped back quickly, flustered. "Do not touch me again," she said, her voice trembling. But Aaron could hear the conflict beneath her words. "As you wish," he replied softly. She turned and walked inside, though her steps faltered. When she reached her room, she pressed her hand against her chest. The echo of his touch lingered, strange and powerful, like a spark awakening after long sleep. For the first time, she wondered if punishment could become destiny, and whether her heart, long bound by duty, was beginning to change in ways she could not understand. The days that followed passed slowly, filled with silence that neither of them knew how to break. The house felt too large for two people who barely spoke. Lysera spent her mornings in the garden, her hands brushing over strange blue flowers that opened only at sunrise. Aaron often worked outside, fixing small machines that had been left behind by the Empire's builders. Though they shared the same space, an invisible wall stood between them, made of pride, loss, and uncertainty. One morning, Lysera woke before dawn. She stepped outside, the cool air touching her skin like dew. The garden shimmered softly under the twin moons. For a long while, she just listened, to the wind, to the low hum of the living plants, to her own quiet heartbeat. But her peace broke when she noticed Aaron standing near the fence, shirt damp with sweat, working on a damaged drone. He had been awake since before sunrise. The faint light caught the muscles in his arms as he lifted a metal plate. She looked away quickly, unsure why she was watching. "Could you hand me that wrench?" he asked suddenly without looking at her. Startled, she hesitated before moving closer. She picked up the tool and held it out. "Here." Their fingers brushed again as he took it, and her chest tightened the way it had that first night. She tried to ignore it. "You repair machines?" she asked quietly. "When I was a soldier, I learned to fix what broke," he said. "There wasn't always help nearby." "Your kind builds machines that destroy," she said, not as an insult but as truth. He stopped working and looked at her. "Sometimes, but we also build things that save lives. Depends on who's holding the tools." His answer lingered in her mind long after she left him there. The humans she had seen before were either prisoners or rebels, desperate and angry. But Aaron spoke with calm honesty, without fear. She began to wonder what kind of man he really was beneath the walls of duty and pain. Later that day, a small messenger drone arrived from the palace. Lysra froze when she saw the seal of her mother, the queen. The message was short and sharp. She was to remain obedient, show loyalty, and keep her husband content for the sake of the Empire's image. Any sign of rebellion would result in her exile to a barren world. Lysra's hands trembled as she read. The words burned her pride, but what hurt more was the cold tone, the reminder that to her family she was no longer a daughter but a symbol. Aaron saw her pale face as she stood in the hall. "Bad news?" he asked gently. "Only a reminder," she said quietly, "that my freedom is an illusion." He hesitated, then said, "Maybe not forever. I don't think your people punish forever." She gave him a tired smile. "You do not know my mother." That night she couldn't sleep. The wind carried faint music from the city far beyond the hills. She walked into the main hall and found Aaron sitting by the fire. The orange light painted his face in soft shadow. He looked up as she entered. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked. She shook her head. "My thoughts are heavy." She sat across from him. For a while they said nothing, the silence filled by the crackling of flame. Then she asked, "Why did you not hate me?" He frowned slightly. "Should I?" "You had every reason," she said. "My people burned your colony, destroyed your home." He looked into the fire for a long moment before replying. "I've seen hate," he said softly. "It eats a person alive. I didn't want to become that." She watched him closely, the honesty in his voice disarming her. "You are not what I expected," she said. "And what did you expect?" he asked, smiling faintly. "A loud, angry human who thinks himself strong," she said. "But you are quiet," he shrugged. "Quiet doesn't mean weak." For the first time she smiled, small, real, unguarded. It surprised even her. Aaron saw it and felt something warm stir inside his chest. He had seen many faces on the battlefield, but never one like hers, so proud and yet so lost. The firelight made her silver eyes glow softly, and he had to look away before his thoughts ran too deep. The days began to change after that. They still argued sometimes, mostly about small things, how to prepare food, how to handle the drones, but their words carried less edge. Lysra started joining him when he worked outside, asking about the machines and the metals. Aaron showed her how to hold a tool, how to adjust a wire. Her hands were delicate, unused to rough work, but she learned quickly. When she smiled after getting something right, he found himself smiling back. One afternoon, rain came without warning. It fell in silver sheets, drenching the garden. Lysra laughed for the first time in months. She raised her hands to the sky, feeling the drops cool against her skin. Aaron watched from the porch, unable to stop himself from smiling at the sight. When the wind grew colder, he stepped forward, holding out a cloak. "You'll catch a chill," he said. She turned, water dripping from her hair, and for a heartbeat they were close again. She saw kindness in his eyes, real, unforced, and she felt the world tilt. She took the cloak slowly and whispered, "Thank you." Her voice was softer than he had ever heard it. That night, something inside her began to change. She started to see him not as a punishment, but as a mystery. The human she had been forced to marry was more honorable than many nobles she had known. He treated her with quiet respect, never crossing lines, never speaking cruelly. And in those small, gentle actions, he broke the walls around her heart more effectively than anger or power ever could. But peace never lasts long in the Empire. Weeks later, a visitor came, an imperial officer named Serath sent by the Queen. He arrived in a sleek transport wearing armor that gleamed like ice. His tone was smooth, but his eyes were sharp. "Your Majesty sends her regards," he said to Lysra. "She wishes to know whether her daughter has learned humility among the humans." Lysra kept her face calm, though her heart tightened. "You may tell her I'm alive," she said coldly. "And the human?" Serath asked, glancing toward Aaron with faint disdain. "He is a good man," she said simply. The officer raised an eyebrow. "Be careful, Princess. Compassion for your captor may be seen as betrayal," she replied. "He is not my captor. He is my husband." Aaron had stood silent through the exchange, but the respect in her words struck him deeply. When Serath finally left, Lysra looked at Aaron and said quietly, "They expect me to break." "I will not," he nodded. Then neither will I. That night, the wind howled across the hills. Lysera couldn't sleep again. She walked into the garden where Aaron was fixing a broken light post. The beam flickered weakly as he tightened a wire. "You work even when it's dark," she said softly. "I don't like leaving things broken," he said without looking up. She stood beside him for a moment, watching his hands. Then she said, "Perhaps that is why you were chosen." He glanced at her. Chosen for what? To mend what others have broken. He didn't know what to say. The words hung between them, heavy and meaningful. The wind lifted her hair, brushing it across his arm, and she didn't move away. Their eyes met again in that soft half-light. No words, no promises, just an understanding that something unspoken was growing between them, something neither could stop. Days passed, and they fell into a rhythm that felt almost peaceful. They shared small jokes. She taught him some alien words, laughing when he mispronounced them. He showed her how to light a campfire using only 2 stones. Each night they sat closer by the fire, talking about the stars, about dreams, about what it meant to belong. But one evening, a storm swept through the valley, stronger than any before. Lightning tore across the sky, striking the outer fences. A drone exploded near the garden, sending sparks flying. Lysera screamed as debris flew toward her. Before she could move, Aaron rushed forward and shielded her with his body. The blast knocked them both to the ground, dust filling the air. When the noise faded, she opened her eyes and saw him lying over her, shielding her from harm. His face was cut, blood on his cheek, but his eyes were steady. "Are you hurt?" he asked, breathless. "No," she whispered, trembling. You protected me." He smiled faintly. "I told you. I don't like leaving things broken." She touched his face gently, her hand trembling. The cut was shallow, but the gesture carried something deeper than words. "You could have died," she said. "Not while you needed me," he answered quietly. For a long moment they stayed like that. Rain pouring, hearts racing, the world around them forgotten. And as he helped her stand, she realized that her punishment had turned into something else entirely. The man she had once feared had become her shelter. That night, as the storm faded, she stood by the window watching him sleep on the couch. The faint light from the moons fell across his face. Her heart ached with a feeling she couldn't name. It was not duty. It was not pity. It was something warmer, deeper. A quiet bond born from shared silence, small kindness, and courage. She whispered softly into the night, "Maybe this was never punishment. Maybe this was a lesson. For both of us." The sun rose over the quiet estate after the storm, painting the sky with soft gold and pale pink. The damage to the garden was clear. Broken fences, burned vines, scattered shards of glass from the drones. But the peace that followed felt different. The air smelled of wet earth and smoke, and the silence carried a strange calm. Lysera stepped outside barefoot, her long robe brushing the ground. Aaron was already there, clearing the debris, his hand steady even though his arm still carried scratches from the explosion. She watched him work for a long time before speaking. "You should rest," she said softly. He looked up, smiling faintly. "I've had worse." "You humans always say that," she replied. He laughed lightly, and she found herself smiling too. For the first time since the ceremony, they felt like more than strangers forced together. There was warmth in the space between them, unspoken but real. When the repairs were done, they sat under the wide silver tree that had somehow survived the storm. The leaves shimmered faintly in the morning light. Lysera looked up at them, lost in thought. "When I was a child," she said, "I used to climb these trees. My mother said it was not proper for a princess, but I liked the feeling of being high above the world. It made me feel free." Aaron nodded slowly. "When I was a boy, I climbed radio towers back on New Eden. My mother used to shout at me for it." She laughed quietly. "So even as children, we disobeyed." "Seems so," he said with a grin. "Maybe that's why we're both here now." As the days passed, their bond grew in quiet ways. Lysera began helping Aaron with small repairs. She learned how to read the simple human tools, wrenches, wires, bolts, and he in turn learned a few alien symbols from her. Their hands often brushed while passing things. Neither spoke of it, but both felt it. The once cold house began to feel alive with laughter, the hum of shared work and the faint melody of trust. But outside their small world, whispers spread. The Queen's spies reported that her daughter had grown close to her human husband. The council grew uneasy, fearing that the princess's sympathy for humans might weaken the Empire's strength. A decision was made to test her loyalty. A secret message was sent to Lysera's estate, carrying orders she never expected to read. The message came at dusk. Lysera opened it in silence, her eyes scanning the glowing words. Her breath caught. The queen demanded that she deliver a hidden signal to the fleet orbiting above, one that would locate and destroy the remaining human refugees still hiding near the border. It was a test to prove she was loyal to her own kind again. If she refused, the queen would send soldiers to take her away and execute Aaron as a traitor who had corrupted her. Her hands shook as she read. She felt trapped between two impossible choices: her people's approval or the life of the man who had shown her kindness when all others had turned away. That night she sat alone in the garden, unable to breathe. Aaron found her there, staring at the stars. "You've been quiet," he said gently. "Something's wrong." She hesitated. "My mother sent a command," she whispered. "She wants me to prove my loyalty by sending a signal." "What kind of signal?" he asked. "A signal that will destroy the humans who survived." Aaron's eyes darkened. He didn't speak for a moment. The silence between them was heavy. "And if you refuse?" he finally asked. "Then she will destroy you," Lysera said, her voice breaking. He looked at her, calm but steady. "Then we'll find another way." "There is no other way," she said bitterly. "You don't understand. The fleet obeys her alone." "I understand more than you think," he replied quietly. "I've lived under orders my whole life too." That night neither of them slept. Lysera walked through the halls, her heart torn between duty and compassion. She looked at Aaron through the open doorway of his room, where he sat working on a small machine, an old human transmitter. His face was focused, his hands careful. She wanted to tell him everything: the fear, the confusion, the strange warmth she felt when near him. But the words wouldn't come. She turned away, tears burning her eyes. The next morning, Aaron found her standing before the transmitter in the main hall. She had the signal code in her hand. "If I send this," she said, "thousands will die. If I don't, you will." "Then don't send it," he said firmly. "If they come for me, I'll face them." "You will die," she said. "You've already risked enough for me." He stepped closer. "You risked everything to save my people once. Let me stand with you now." The courage in his eyes made her heart ache. "Why?" she asked. "Because it's right," he said simply. "Because you're not my punishment anymore." His words struck her like lightning. She looked away, trembling. "You should not say such things," she whispered. "It changes nothing." "It changes everything," he said. The day passed in tense silence. By evening, they saw the shadows of ships crossing the clouds above. The Queen's fleet had arrived to ensure obedience. Lysera felt her world closing in. Aaron loaded a pack with supplies, preparing for the worst. "If they come," he said, "we run for the valley. I know a passage through the cliffs." "You would run from an empire?" she asked, astonished. "For you, yes," he said without hesitation. When night fell, the sky burned with the glow of engines. A voice echoed from the ship's loudspeaker. "Princess Lysera of Varelia, your time of testing has come. Deliver the signal or face judgment." Her heart pounded. Aaron took her hand. "Whatever happens, we face it together." She looked at him, tears in her eyes. "I don't deserve your faith." "Then earn it," he said softly. She stepped toward the transmitter, the signal key glowing in her palm. The fleet waited. She could almost hear her mother's voice, cold, commanding, watching. The stars above seemed to tremble. Lysera closed her eyes. Then she made her choice. With one swift motion, she changed the code, sending a false signal. One that would draw the fleet far away from the human refugees and deep into the uninhabited sector. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then alarms began to sound in the ship above. The fleet turned sharply, engines roaring, following the false coordinates. Lysera stood frozen, breathless. Aaron grabbed her hand. "You did it," he said. "You saved them." "And doomed us," she whispered. Moments later, a bright light filled the sky, a small craft descending fast. Soldiers. They had traced her deception. Aaron moved quickly, pulling her behind the garden wall. "We need to go," he said. "They'll be here in minutes." "Where can we go?" she asked. "Anywhere but here." He led her through the trees toward the outer gate, but before they could reach it, a blast of light struck the ground near them. The force threw them back. From the smoke stepped Commander Sarath, the same officer who had once warned her. His expression was cold. "So it's true," he said. "The princess has betrayed her people for a human." Lysera stood tall even as fear gripped her. "I chose mercy," she said. "If that is betrayal, then I will wear it proudly." Sarath's gaze flicked to Aaron. "And you? Human will pay for it." He raised his weapon. Before he could fire, Aaron lunged forward, grabbing a fallen shield drone. The blast hit the metal plate instead, sending sparks flying. He tackled Sarath, the two men struggling on the ground. Lysera cried out, trying to reach them, but another guard pulled her back. "Stop!" she shouted. "Please stop!" The fight was quick but brutal. Aaron managed to disarm Sarath, but the commander struck back, knocking him to the ground. Lysera ran forward and pressed her hand against the control on Sarath's armor, sending a surge of electric energy through the suit. The man collapsed, stunned. Aaron rose, breathing hard. "Are you hurt?" she asked. "No," he said, but his arm was bleeding again. "We need to move." Together they fled into the forest beyond the estate, the night sky alive with searchlights. Behind them, the Queen's soldiers swarmed through the ruins, calling for their capture. Lysera glanced back once, seeing the flames consume the place that had once been their home. Her heart broke, not for the palace or the empire, but for the simple peace they had found there. They walked through the dark hills until the first light of dawn touched the horizon. Exhausted, they stopped beside a stream. Aaron sat on a rock, wiping the blood from his arm. Lysera knelt beside him, her fingers trembling as she tore a piece of her cloak to wrap his wound. "You risked your life again," she whispered. "You keep doing that." "It's becoming a habit," he said with a weak smile. She looked at him then, truly looked, and realized that everything had changed. She was no longer the proud princess who saw humans as lesser. She was just a woman who had found courage in the heart of one she was told to despise. "Aaron," she said softly, "if we survive this, my people will hunt us forever." He looked at her, eyes steady. "Then we'll keep running until they stop." The morning light touched their faces. Around them, the world was quiet again, as if holding its breath. Lysera felt her heart beat with a strange, fierce hope. For the first time, she did not fear her fate. She had chosen it and chosen him. The morning mist rose from the valley like silver smoke. Lysera and Aaron moved carefully through the forest, their boots sinking into damp soil. They had traveled all night without rest, following the narrow stream that cut through the rocky hills. Every sound felt sharper now. The whisper of wind through leaves, the distant hum of patrol drones above. Behind them, the Queen's forces searched with relentless precision. They both knew capture meant the end. Aaron walked ahead, scanning the horizon with his soldier's eyes. His arm still throbbed from the wound, but he ignored the pain. Lysera followed closely, clutching a small pack that held food, water, and the coded crystal she had used to send the false signal. She glanced at him often, silently amazed at his calm. Even in danger, he moved with quiet purpose, never complaining, never afraid. After hours of walking, they reached a ridge overlooking the valley. From there, they could see the distant shimmer of the capital's towers, rising like ghosts against the pale sky. Lysera's throat tightened. "It feels strange," she whispered. "That city was once my whole world. Now I am its enemy." Aaron looked at her. "Maybe someday it won't be your enemy anymore." "I do not think my mother forgives," she said softly. "Queens rarely do." He rested a hand on her shoulder. "Then we keep moving forward." They found shelter in an abandoned outpost built long ago by frontier miners. The roof was cracked, but the structure still held. Aaron started a small fire while Lysera cleaned his wound again. He winced slightly but said nothing. "You hide your pain too well," she murmured. "It's how soldiers survive," he replied. "Pain reminds us we're still alive." She met his gaze, seeing both strength and exhaustion in his eyes. "You should not always be the strong one," she said quietly. "You're allowed to rest. Maybe later," he said with a faint smile. Night fell. The stars above were clearer than ever, sharp points of light scattered across endless darkness. Lysera sat near the fire, her long silver hair reflecting the flames. "When I was little," she said, "I used to imagine flying among those stars. I thought freedom meant distance. But I was wrong. Freedom is not how far you go, it's who stands beside you." Aaron looked up from his seat on the floor. "Then you're free now," he said softly. She smiled faintly, her eyes glistening. Perhaps I am. The next morning, the peace broke. The faint rumble of engines echoed across the valley. Aaron rushed outside and saw armored transports gliding low through the mist. "They found us," he said. Lysera joined him, her heart pounding. "We cannot fight them," she said. "No," he agreed, "but maybe we can outsmart them." He pointed to a series of caves in the cliffs ahead. "If we reach those, the scanners won't detect us." Without another word, they grabbed their packs and ran. The ground trembled as ships passed overhead. Blades of blue light swept across the trees, searching. Aaron grabbed Lysera's hand, pulling her through the undergrowth. Branches tore at their clothes. Their breath came in short gasps. A sudden explosion shook the air. A drone had spotted their trail. "Go," Aaron shouted. They raced through the forest until they reached the mouth of a wide cave. Inside, the air was cool and silent, filled with ancient crystal formations that glowed faintly. They crouched behind a stone wall as the drones circled outside. For a long time, they stayed perfectly still, listening to the distant roar fade away. Only when silence returned did Lysera finally exhale. "You saved us again," she said. "You make it sound like I planned these things," he replied with a tired smile. She looked around the glowing cave. The crystals reflected their faces in soft light, fragile and beautiful. "It feels alive," she whispered. "Like the planet is watching." "Maybe it is," he said. "Your world has more heart than your empire gives it credit for." As they rested, Lysera thought about her mother, about the weight of the crown and the coldness in her eyes. She realized she no longer feared her. The queen's power could destroy cities, but it could not command love. What she shared with Aaron was small and quiet, yet stronger than any throne, but fate was not finished testing them. Late that night, while they slept near the fire, a faint sound echoed from the cave's entrance, the scrape of metal against stone. Aaron woke instantly, motioning for silence. Through the faint glow, he saw shadows moving. Soldiers. He pulled Lysera behind a crystal pillar. "Stay back," he whispered. "No," she said firmly. "I will not leave you." Their eyes met, and he saw that same courage that had once defied her mother's empire. He nodded. Then together, the first soldier entered, weapon raised. Aaron waited until the beam of the flashlight passed, then struck fast, knocking the weapon aside. A flash of light, a brief struggle, then silence. But there were more coming. He grabbed Lysera's hand, leading her deeper into the cave tunnels. The passage twisted like a maze, walls glowing faintly around them. Behind, the sound of pursuit grew louder. They reached a wide chamber where the crystals pulsed with strange energy. "This place," Lysera whispered, "it's a core vein. The planet's life runs through here." Aaron turned, breathing hard. "Can it help us?" "Maybe," she said. "If I can activate it, it will create a magnetic field strong enough to block their trackers." "Do it," he said. She knelt by the crystal cluster and placed her palm on its surface. The stone flared with blue light, reacting to her touch. A deep hum filled the air. Outside the chamber, the soldiers shouted as their scanners failed. "It's working," Aaron said. The floor trembled as the energy grew. Sparks of light danced along the walls. Lysera tried to steady the flow, but the crystal pulsed too strong. "I can't control it," she cried. "It's too much." Aaron grabbed her shoulders. "Let it go." The chamber exploded with light. For a moment, the world vanished in a storm of blue fire, then silence. When the light faded, they were lying on the floor, the soldiers gone. The cave around them glowed softly, peaceful again. Lysera sat up, dizzy but alive. "What happened?" she whispered. "You saved us again," Aaron said with a grin, his voice weak but steady. "Or maybe the planet did." She smiled through tears. "We are not alone anymore." They stayed hidden for days, waiting for the search to fade. When they finally stepped outside, the world was quiet again. The fleet had withdrawn. The skies were clear. Lysera looked to the horizon. "They think we are dead," she said. "Then let them," Aaron replied. "It's safer that way." They walked until they reached a small human settlement hidden beyond the mountains. The people there welcomed them cautiously at first, but when they saw who Aaron was, they offered food and shelter. Lysera watched them work together, humans building homes from scrap, children laughing in the dust, and something inside her healed. She had once seen humans as fragile, yet here they were, surviving, rebuilding, living. Days turned into weeks. Aaron helped the settlers strengthen their defenses while Lysera used her knowledge of alien systems to fix their energy grid. Together, they became part of something larger than themselves. At night, they often sat by the fire, sharing stories of their two worlds. One evening, as the stars stretched across the sky, Lysra said softly, "Do you think peace is possible?" Aaron looked at her. "If people like you exist, then yes." She smiled, eyes shining. "And if people like you still believe, then maybe there's hope." One morning, a message arrived from deep space, a faint signal coded in the royal language. Lysra opened it with trembling hands. It was from her younger sister. The words were brief. "Mother has fallen ill. The council is divided. Many whisper of your mercy. They say the people remember you." Lysra read the message twice, then looked at Aaron. "They call me a traitor no more," she said quietly. "They remember the mercy I once showed." "Then maybe mercy is finally winning," he said. She stood watching the sunrise. "I must go back someday," she said. "Not to reclaim the crown, but to rebuild what was broken." "I'll go with you," Aaron said. "Even if the stars stand in our way." She turned toward him, her voice soft. "You would follow me into the heart of an empire that once wanted you dead?" "I'd follow you anywhere," he said simply. There was no pride in his tone, no demand, only truth. For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind carried the scent of rain, and the distant mountains glowed with dawn. Lysra felt her heart ache with something bright and endless. She reached out, taking his hand gently. "When I first met you, I thought you were my punishment," she whispered. "But now I see you were my freedom." Aaron smiled, his fingers closing around hers. "And you were my reason to keep fighting." Together they stood beneath the rising suns, the light spilling over the valley. Behind them lay the ruins of war, ahead the promise of a new beginning. The princess who had once been forced into marriage now walked beside the man who had taught her compassion. Their worlds had been enemies, but through them, a fragile bridge had formed, built not by treaties or armies, but by understanding, kindness, and courage. As they set out toward the horizon, the wind carried a whisper through the hills, a song of two hearts, once divided by stars, now beating as one, and somewhere far above even the heavens seemed to listen.